to the BarCode podcast with your host, Chris Glandon, serving cybersecurity straight up with no chaser. Let's hit the bar and grab a drink.
Damn, it's 2 p.m. and it's dark out already.
Nah, man, it's just a shadow from that big bank across the street.
Oh, yeah, those fools? I don't know, they keep shorting me on every check. I always knew they were kind of shady.
Well, they tower over small businesses like us.
Nah, it's okay. We're the real kings in this city. They know what time it is.
Yeah? You know who else knows what time it is? Cyber attackers.
Oh, yeah? How so?
Well, I'll put it like this. If you look at an attacker's heat map, it's always 110 in the shade.
Well, funny you say that. That's the name of tonight's drink. And here's how you make it. It's real easy. We're going to get you a 16 ounce of your favorite lager, 1.5 ounce shot of tequila. Drop it, drink it.
That's legit, man.
Told you.
Well, I'm out. A true security veteran just walked in, and I got to go sync up with him.
All right, brother. Well, you guys have fun. We'll see you next round.
Jim Tiller is here with me today. Jim is a security executive with over 2 decades of information security experience, leadership, a history of outstanding performance and growth, business turnarounds, and global recognition for innovation in security strategies and execution. He is currently global CISO for Harvey Nash. My man, Jim, what is going on, my friend?
Hey, Chris. Wow, that's a mouthful. Let me start off by saying all those things that I've got to do come for 2 reasons. One is I've been in this rodeo for a long time, and I got to stand on the shoulders of some really great people. So there's some amazing people I've got a chance to work with, and they're just, this industry is awesome. We really get to come in contact with some amazing people, and but man, it is great to be here, Chris. I've been so excited about getting on this podcast with you, and hardly slept last night, to be honest.
Oh man, I'm honored to have you on, man. You're a veteran in the industry, and I'm just looking forward to hearing a little bit about that. And I guess we can start off with that. You know, talk to me a little bit about that experience that I mentioned in the intro, and what led up to your current role at Harvey Nash.
Well, I guess the short version of the story is it was really kind of pen testing that got me into it. If you go back to 91, 92 timeframe, I was messing around with computers and networks. Actually, I was writing applications for Autodesk. I wanted to be an engineer, a civil engineer, structural engineer, and started building networks to help my applications work better. And then I realized, wow, these systems, I can do anything I want to the computer a couple of cubes down kind of thing. And so then I started kind of messing around with, the old Solaris pizza boxes. And then I realized that, I can make kind of computers kind of do what I wanted them to do, whether it be through developing an application or hacking into them, lack of a better term. So I committed to being a security professional probably in 1994, I think is when I said I made the turn. I want to make it a focus. And then from there, I just kept building up on experiences. I got into risk management and compliance and, early days of compliance when HIPAA and GLBA, for example, came out. I got to be involved with a lot of really interesting things like CMMI or SSE CMI back in the mid and late 90s. Obviously HIPAA, I mentioned things like when BS 7799 Part 1 first came out from the British Standards Institute. That was a game changer for me. From there, I started just quite literally flying around the world consulting organizations on cybersecurity. So I was really given an amazing opportunity to collaborate with huge financial firms, small organizations. It was just an amazing opportunity, a learning opportunity, a knowledge sharing opportunity. And then I started running, small teams, and then small teams became bigger teams, and bigger teams became business units. And, next thing you know, you're really spending a lot of time working with, again, great people and being able to share your knowledge and their knowledge with organizations through the consultative process. I know it sounds kind of, clinical, but I guess the way I would characterize it is I've spent my entire career doing security as a consultant. Right. Yeah. So it wasn't like I went to go be, VP of this bank for a little while, or went to do this thing over here for a little while. I've always been in that consultative realm, specifically in cybersecurity. And, let's just say up until recently, right? So I've advised CISOs around the world in many ways or shapes or forms. And now, I finally decided to put my money where my mouth is and become the CISO for a global organization. And it's been great so far. Harvey Nash is an amazing company. So super happy to be here.
That's awesome to hear, man. And I'm sure that with your extensive advisory experience, you've got to see a long list of different types of organizations, different industries that you've had to interact with, and different struggles that they go through. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about those organizations that are in the shadows, right? And what I mean by that is, if you have a company like manufacturing, transportation, industrial, agriculture, where if a system were to go down, the business survival rate itself would be much higher than industries like financial, healthcare, and other electronic-based business models. Although I think that has changed in recent years due to the technology integration, business processes, and supply chain needs. I'm curious, is this something that you've noticed as well? And if so, what are some of the problems that these type of organizations face? And do you agree that these industries are still primed for a cyber attack?
Yeah, wow, that's a big one. So I think your point about in the shadows is amazing, because there was a time, like I'm trying to remember who was the famous guy that, Willie Sutton said, "Why do you rob banks?" And he goes, "Well, that's where the money is," right? The reality of it is organization. So let's kind of start with all security are the controls that protect your assets from threats. Okay. Mm-hmm. So threats want your assets, and the greatest valuable asset is typically money, which is in the beginning. And then that then kind of turned into almost like processing power in some way. And then it was information, and then manipulating that access and information to gain other forms of monetary value, right? So stealing credit cards and all this kind of stuff. So nothing's really changed. But the simple fact of the matter is, to your point, is there for decades, forever, frankly, is a lot of organizations can be, again, kind of like you said, in the shadow, because, why would somebody want to hack me? I'm in the agriculture business. I actually had an organization, a CIO of a large organization, say to me, something to the effect of, "We make garbage bags," or something like that, right? I can't remember exactly what it was. Why would somebody want to attack me? And it makes for a really compelling conversation, right? You get sort of ethereal at that point, really kind of balancing that perspective of what is a threat and also what makes you a target. But when we look at the indiscriminate nature of hacking today, especially like ransomware and things of that nature, combined with something you said that's incredibly important, is the adoption of technology and becoming more deeply infused into how businesses do their business, right? So you take these two massive growth areas, the expansion of the threat environment and the interpretation of what is a threat, combined with what makes me a target. What makes you a target now is simply because you have the potential to have value, and threats can spend easily more time trying to poke into small, medium-sized organizations, and frankly, easily, because their security posture is not, at the same of like a Bank of America or an American Express, for example. And they can just sit there and wait for something to happen that gives them that value proposition. And they can turn that into 6, 7, 8-figure payouts as monetizing these type of things. So now you have organizations that historically were not see themselves as a target. Why would somebody hack me? I make, coat hangers kind of thing. but they're also adopting technology at a massive rate, which makes them ironically more exposed because their business is becoming deeply reliant on that technology. So we really have like a collision of about 4 or 5 different major changes affecting virtually every company on the planet now. And, just take the United States alone, we have about, I think it's somewhere in neighborhood between 30 to 35 million small businesses. Now, even if there was only 25% of that were relying heavily on technology as a new adoption or transformative thing for their business, that's a lot of companies, was that 350,000 or something like that are now having to deal with security in ways that they've never had to perceive before, and it can have a greater impact.
Yeah, I know ignorance is a strong word, but a lot of times it's that ignorance of security or just knowing what threats exist, because your day to day, you're laser focused on your business, and rightfully so up until this point. And then with the introduction of the technology, the supply chain, it's almost like you can't avoid it at this point.
And I think, ignorance is a strong word, and there is some reality to that. But I think it also plays in just, it seems totally insurmountable. Let's say you're a company, you do whatever it is that you do. You're starting to migrate to the cloud. You're leveraging data analytics and BI. You're looking at more sophisticated CRM applications. You're obtaining information from your manufacturing equipment through, IoT, all this kind of stuff, right? Now, add to that, you're talking to a security company, a vendor, and they're trying to sell you EDR, or another one's trying to sell you pen testing, and they're scaring you to death, right? So the whole FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt sales cycle still exists, unfortunately, as part of our industry sales cycle, right? And, and so if you think about it, human nature, when you become overwhelmed, sometimes you just kind of turn away from it. Like, I can't do anything with this. It's just too much. You know what? I'm just going to slide it off the side. It's so to be human, right?
Yeah.
And, you go in this organization and they're trying to adopt this technology, trying to up the ante, as it were, and be more competitive, or whatever business objective we're talking about. And then they're like, wait, there's just so much happening in security bad. I just don't even know where to start. And so they just throw their hands up in the air. And can you blame them? I'd say the answer is absolutely not. You can't blame them. It's a difficult challenge, and one on top of all the technology adoption. That's the technology is enough disruption. Now we're asking them to deal with complex security issues.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, it's we're sort of in a place where a lot of these organizations are just surviving during the pandemic and just trying to, again, focus on their business. It's like, we've never been hit by a cyber attack, so why am I going to put that at the top of the list?
That's it.
And on the topic of challenges associated with those smaller organizations, how about budget and resource constraints?
I think there's this thought that the more you spend makes you more secure. And I'm here to tell you that's actually not the case. Now, sometimes there's just simple scales of economy. You've got 27 internet connections, you need to buy 27 firewalls. I'm sorry, but you have to buy 27 firewalls as an example. There's just certain things you can't get away from. But just because you take two companies of the exact same size and one spends twice as much as the other one, it does not necessarily mean they're actually more secure, which kind of went back to my, painting the bridge, getting the basics done kind of thing, which is an oversimplified message, but it's absolutely the fact.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a huge myth. And unfortunately, there are snake oil solutions out there, which, as security professionals, we know is not the cure-all. But that could be confusing for those organizations and just challenging for them to recognize the difference.
Yes, sir. That is absolutely dead spot on. It's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. And the resources, again, having limited resources to actually manage that solution, even if they had the budget, just to be able to manage it, configure it, not wanting to spend money on a MSP, or if an MSP is not even an option for them, just having resources with that knowledge to bring in, hire, who to hire. That's all, I think, just overwhelming for those businesses?
It's intensely overwhelming. I mean, think about this: is you had to, one, find somebody, attract them to your relatively, let's just say, small company, because you're not, Fortune 1000, 500 or whatever. Then let's get this: you have to keep them utilized, right? Like, you get in a heavy hitter, and they're going to figure out your environment pretty quick, and then start making things happen. And then, they're going to get bored. So how do you keep them interested? And let's call a duck a duck. Security people fundamentally, and I'm not saying this is just limited to security professionals, but I mean, come on, we're in it because it's fast moving, fast paced. It's completely bonkers on every day.
Yeah.
There's something crazy going on. There's always something to learn. There's always something to try. It is non-stop. So if you stop that crazy train for 1 second, they're going to get off. Okay. And so how do you find, attract, acquire, afford, keep them engaged, keep them up to speed, get them out to various, it's an equation that is just overwhelming. So one, we're overwhelming small, medium companies with technology, overwhelming them with the whole, you need to be secure, and here's my 27 solutions. And then we're overwhelmed with the fact that, well, you're not going to be able to find anybody to help you anyway. It's just like, it's completely unobtainium. And imagine you're the CEO or CIO, CTO, VP, whatever of a company that is just absorbing technology at a massive rate. And now you have this mountain in front of you just from a business process. And now you got to figure out, well, who do I go to? Do I even know if this person is have the right skills for me? And will those skills mature? I mean, will I be able to keep that person interested? I mean, it's absolutely mind-numbingly complicated and difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And do you feel like the COVID pandemic just hit the accelerator on the risk factor?
Yeah. COVID, the pandemic, created a couple interesting things. One is we were cruising right along with migrating to the cloud. We had things like Zoom and sort of kind of enhancing the work experience and the IT world. But it was kind of like struggling along, like just moving along. You had your early adopters and the kind of development. All of a sudden you get hit by a pandemic. Obviously, the most obvious tip of the iceberg is everybody started working from home and all that implied. But that just drove a wedge, like you said, accelerator, just drove a wedge, and everybody completely changed their thinking and moved really rapidly. So organizations moved far more rapidly to the cloud. That created demand for the big ones, the Amazons and the Microsofts and so forth. And they just really started advancing and really kind of pouring all their energy into their cloud options, right? And streamlining it. And importantly, making it easier to adopt, right? And so now, roughly 2 years into this madness, if you will, we have companies, dealing with enormous options around IT and technology. And it outpaced, frankly, kind of the rhythm of the business. And so a lot of businesses are catching up to these new capabilities. And you have these big companies that have just piling out new sophisticated capabilities, which includes security, by the way. And it's just, I think for a lot of businesses, it can be overwhelming. And it's a great thing. Let's not say it's a bad thing. It's a great thing. Not the pandemic, obviously, but the great thing around the
that they were just thrusted into the digital world, right?
Absolutely thrusted into the digital world, and it has a lot of byproduct. Some not so great.
Yeah. So looking at these organizations that are in the shadows that have been thrusted into the digital world, we can obviously define some common use cases here, but just curious, where would you suggest they get started? How can we, as a security industry, provide them support to become more secure without causing disruption to their day-to-day business? And just helping them understand the criticality, even if their core business isn't tech-based? Or do you think that they already realize the importance?
I think they sense the importance. I think everybody realizes cyber is important in some way, shape, or form. But the question is do they think it's important to them? Because what you see on the news or what you see on articles sometimes seems very far away. When in reality, there was a study recently done that of all the major breaches of information, which we think about, the big ones, the Targets and the Equifaxes and all that kind of stuff, roughly 35 to 40% of the data that was lost was actually through small, medium companies. It didn't come from these giant warehouses that we know of today. So they have to deal with it. They know they have to deal with it. And where is that starting point? So I think there's a couple different ways of going after this. One is, I'll preface by saying a lot of people, rightly so, right, see security as like this super sexy thing, right? Threats and intelligence. And, I get to be 007. I get to be a hacker for a day and not have to go to jail. And it's super cool. And you know what? These are all critically important capabilities, right? But what really makes a company secure at the end of the day, when you pull back the covers and you wipe away all the stuff, there's a handful of people doing the hard work every single day, day in and day out. It's the boring painting the bridge stuff that gets it done. And so why am I saying that is because there's an amazing amount of advantage that is not necessarily marketed in doing just the basics. Hygiene is number one. If somebody would come to me and said, Jim, I need to do 3 things, what are they? I go, patch your systems. Just do it. And it's so old school. I mean, how long have we been talking about patches and passwords, right? Since the first password and since the first patch, fix the hole, so it's getting a little ridiculous. Another piece is identity access management, call it zero trust, put whatever spin you want on it, but you got to control who has access to your resources, whether doesn't matter if they're virtual or whatever, just system or applications or data, just control who has access and manage it, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, it just comes down to find ways of better monitoring your environment, right? And there's degrees of sophistication. I personally believe EDR is one of the best things that vendors and technology in a very, very long time, and you're talking to the guy that was around when IDS was first rolled out, right? And I remember firewalls like, what is that? You're going to put that between the internet and our network? No, you can't do that. So EDR, I think, is an amazing opportunity because the perimeter, right? I don't know if you remember the term Jericho, but it was a very concept back in the 90s and early turn of the century. It was like, okay, there is no more perimeter. The reality of it is I agree with that. You still need firewalls. I'm not saying don't get away with that, but the perimeter is moved to the individual. It's moved to the human being, and to your point earlier, COVID has pushed that to the nth degree immediately, right? Because people are working from home. So EDR, for obvious reasons, because the world is happening from a cyber perspective and a business perspective, really at the human level now, and the data. So you got to protect the person, the system, their access, and then of course make sure that the hygiene of the environment is solid. Those would be the big ones. But as you well know, Chris, there's a lot of other things that need to be considered.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think that's a great place to start. Is sort of
basics,
putting it out there like you don't need these extreme solutions to start out. And if you're a business that you are a target, right? Let's just lay the groundwork. Let's knock out these 3 or 4 heavy hitters that are going to protect you, and then work from there.
Absolutely. If I may be so bold to add one more comment there. We talk about moving to the cloud as very disruptive, especially from a security perspective. So let's take organizations that do have a security program. They may not be huge or small, but they have a CISO, they've got, or an IT security person, whatever the case may be. And they're challenged with, how do I get this security policy to manifest itself in the cloud and so forth. But I don't think we're talking necessarily about all these massive advantages of moving to the cloud. So when you move to the cloud, your optionality for security obviously is reduced to whatever that vendor provides you immediately in many ways. But the options that you do now have in many ways exceed the security practices or technology that you had planned on implementing, right?
Right.
So I would say is, if you're trying to solve a security problem, sometimes getting to the cloud can be a shortcut, and there really are no shortcuts, let's be honest. But here's the kicker. The critical difference is you have to absolutely employ 100% of what that vendor is offering you as security controls in the cloud. Real quick, interesting story is there was a study done actually by Microsoft years ago when they were considering selling parts of Microsoft Office. Okay. And they did a study saying that most people buy Microsoft Office, but only use about 15% of the capabilities of, say, Excel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they're saying, well, maybe we just sell certain capabilities, right? Now we have O365, the rest is history. So it's known fact that of technology solutions out there, people are only using about 20% of this features and functions. And that's become an acceptable behavior. But in reality, if you go to the cloud, you have to use it 100%. You have to be absolutely focused on leveraging those capabilities and configuring to get advantage of it.
No, very, very good point. Let's say we have a satellite view of a city and we're looking at these big buildings. These are the ones that are the healthcare, the financial, the heavy targets, right? This is an attacker's viewpoint. He's looking at a satellite view of the map. Then we just talked about those companies in the shadows, right? The sunlight's got to hit from some angle. There's going to be a business in the shadows. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on this map. And now I'm looking at, that used bookstore, right, on the corner. And the organizations that operate on a much, much, much smaller scale, never been a target, and don't even realize they need to seek security guidance. How do we break through to those companies?
Wow, that's the silver bullet, right? I mean, first of all, the imagery you just created was amazing. I loved it. So I think as an industry, we've kind of failed a little bit for let's call it the little guy, even though it sounds so cliche-ish, right? We have a tendency as an industry to, again, focus on the sexy stuff, right? Which is totally cool. There's no problem with that. But we also have a tendency of just scaring people to death. And so if you're a small company and you maybe not fully understand that you are now a target because, ISR can zoom in on you now. The thing is I think through, I hate to say it, almost like a community effort is, I think as security professionals, we spend, rightly so, I'm not criticizing the industry by any stretch of imagination, right? Is we spend a lot of time talking to each other. We go to these events and dare I say it becomes slightly an echo chamber. And I mean that with all due respect. Putting on events like RSA is not a small feat. Hopefully we'll get to do that again here soon. And it's great for people to come together. But does the used bookstore on the corner of 5th and Main, can they afford to go to RSA? And again, it goes back to just overwhelming them to death. But here's what you'll find is that corner bookstore, I bet you, kind of finds ways to collaborate with some of their, lack of a better term, competitors in the area. They probably are part of some industry, article, paper, website, Facebook group kind of thing.
Yes.
So companies connect. Okay. And as security professionals, we have to be engaging with those communities, right? We have to be ready to go share our time, share our experiences, and provide that. Look, you really need to be thinking in this way. And if you want to take what I say to heart, that's totally up to you. But at least now you're having that conversation. And then you can get back together and kind of feel about what are the next steps. But I really do believe that in today's day and age, I think, information is valuable, and I think information should be made available to everybody when it especially comes to protecting your business, protecting your employees, and protecting your customers, right? And so there's a lot that we have, and we have a tendency to write these giant articles, and we have a tendency to write books, me being included, that is nobody's reading because they're just too long and boring. And so how do we take something as extraordinarily as complex as security and say, listen, at the end of the day, here's what you really need to focus on. Just go do this. What's the intent? Here's the intent of what you need to accomplish. How you do it, these are options, but you'll figure that out in time. But like I said earlier, patching, right? There's a million different ways to do that. So we need to really open ourselves up and engage with small, medium organizations and then go to them. They have events, as soon as pandemic will lighten up a bit. And we need to find that. And we need to find ways of saying, I would love to be on your panel and talk about security.
I love that approach. And you're right. If they're not coming to us, we go to them. I truly believe that if we, inject our knowledge into their business, I walk into that bookstore and I have a used security book and I talk to them about it while I'm there. I'm in their environment, I'm in their comfort zone, but yet I found a way in. And I think it's a matter of just them talking to someone one-on-one about risk in a simplified format.
Yeah. And just to make sure, for clarity's sake, because I'm not talking about going on a sales mission. This isn't about selling your wares. This is about helping others, and let them make a buying decision after that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
In the end, it's I look at it as sort of free advisory. And we do it with people that we know, I think, day to day, friends of ours. If you take our business lives out of it and we're hanging out with our friends that may be mechanics, contractors, farmers, and then, something comes up where it rings that internal alarm, like what you're doing may not be safe. You're going to mention it to them, but that's because you're in that situation. And I think if we seek out those situations, we can definitely raise the visibility for our industry.
Yeah. And to your point, I think we are absolutely talking to our friends. I mean, I know you do it. I do it a bunch as well, but all of us need to take that extra effort and go try to, force multiply is really what I'm talking about here is force multiplication. Yeah. And that is go out and go to their events. I mean, a colleague of mine, former colleague of mine, I've known for 20 years. He actually just went and was a panel speaker at a industry event for, I think it was like furniture manufacturing or something.
Okay.
Right? And there's maybe, 100 people there, maybe 200 people there. And, and now security was on the agenda, and he was able to share kind of like what we're talking about here today. And that is really cool. And we need to be doing a lot more of that.
And you may learn something too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because then you uncover workflows, you uncover tribal knowledge that they have that could help you in your business.
Absolutely. That's actually really good. I didn't really kind of think that all the way through, but you're absolutely right. Every time you get together with somebody, you get to learn something. It's not all about just, barking and sharing your perspective.
You might learn how to build a chair too.
Yeah, go figure.
So, if we look at it through a compliance lens, we can also be a source of identification for those businesses as well. Like, okay, I notice you do business in the EU. That means you must be GDPR compliant. And here are the rules that you must adhere to.
It's amazing, Chris, that happens so often that you wake up one day and go, well, first of all, it cannot be because you opened up a facility in Germany or whatever, or the UK with GDPR, like you mentioned. It could be a new regulation that just falls out of the sky, and you don't really, now you have to understand it. What's its implications? What's my risk? What's my business impact of that? But, that in of itself around compliance, I think there's a new dimension forming now that's adding even more complexity. So a lot of organizations, understandably so, and I'm a huge fan of cyber insurance, right? I think it's a good investment. But cyber insurance companies expect you to be secure, right? And that has a direct impact on your insurability. And then, of course, what type of rate scenario that you're in. So much like, early turn of the century, 1800s to, the Industrial Revolution from the UK, obviously over to the United States and globally, insurance companies set the fire standards we have today. Some company that was manufacturing textiles that was burning down because they were using oil lamps, they didn't care. They didn't want to build in fire suppression. It was the insurance companies that had to pay the bill that invented effectively the fire codes that we know and understand today. We're going to see the exact same thing. And insurance is going to begin to drive what is prioritization. And so you're going to see this very interesting evolution of control frameworks that we have dozens of them, and we have hundreds of whatever compliance issues. And now if you want to be insured, which is now becoming increasingly complex, now they're going to start telling you what to do. Now, how do you fuse all three of those together into a meaningful security program? And, that crazy little thing called business that you still got to get done. How are you going to manage that and do it in a cost-effective way? So times are really interesting, to say the least, and there's a lot of challenges ahead, but there are options. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and if things play out the way that you see them playing out, could it be possible that we start seeing security become more embedded with these insurance companies, or vice versa? Maybe security organizations bringing in the cyber insurance aspect into our arena.
Wow. So I'm grinning while you're saying that, Chris. So quick, I'm going to tell you a little story about a meeting I had with my CEO back in, I think, 2002. And I sat in his office and I said, this security thing, we really got to, this is the biggest thing since sliced bread. This is going to be a big part of our future, but it's only going to last like another 5, 6, maybe 8 years on the outside. So we got to take advantage of this wonderful craziness in business, and help customers, all that kind of great stuff and technology. And he's like, well, why do you think it's going to end in, 5 to 10 years? And I was like, well, obviously security is just going to become integrated into everything, right? That's the most obvious thing to have happen. IT and whatever. We didn't have cloud back then. And it's so funny how really wrong I was, completely way off base, totally wrong. He was a smart man that listened to me. So why did I tell you that story and why I'm reacting that way is I'm very interested to see, and this relates back to my conversation about the cloud, right? Is at what point does the vast optionality, vast options and horizons of all possibilities in cybersecurity, look at all the products that are out there. Do me a favor, go look at a list of security products that were available in 2005, 2010, and then fast forward to now. It's grown by literally like 20 times. It's unbelievable, and they're all very good. I mean, all of them have a really interesting value proposition. But at some point, how do we take organizations and say, these are the right things to buy, and then having to deal with that flow? And it goes back to the cloud concept. Will security just be a feature in a cloud environment? Will it just be a feature in an application or a platform as a service? I mean, it kind of exists today, but one could argue that we're not bonding the security all the way through the system in the cloud and all that means. We see things like CASB or SASE and all this kind of other kind of things that are moving obviously in that direction. But to your point about having security integrated, I do think between cloud, insurance, and compliance, where I think we're going to see a hyper alignment there. And I really thought CMMC from the government actually was going to be a stimulator of that. And then of course, version 2 came out, it softened, and the rest is history. But I think between these government oversight, industry oversight, like the first, like PCI is a good example of that. And then now the insurance companies, they all realize they're really fundamentally asking for the same thing. They're just asking for it in different ways. And that is going to be like a Nova moment, like where the weight is going to crush under its own weight and finally become something that people can understand.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it.
You and me both.
Is cyber insurance becoming regulated or required in any industry? Or are we at that point yet where, if you drive a car, you got to have insurance? If you operate business XYZ, do you have to have insurance?
Wow. You know what? I honestly can't answer that question. I could see that happening, but I would have not have thought of that before you just mentioned it, to be honest with you. I see insurance organizations and underwriters acting as guides, okay, and saying, okay, here's what the insurance companies are asking for. Here's how, the controls you need to qualify, and then the degree of those controls help kind of say how risky of an investment are you from an insurance perspective. I still think leveraging other organizations to help you implement those controls, I don't necessarily see that intermingling, but I can see how that could happen. But as far as requiring cyber insurance, that may actually be out there. I have to admit that's a gap for me. I'd have to do some research on that. Because I think
interesting perspective if you look at the parallels between auto or home insurance to cyber insurance, and you got hit by ransomware, we're raising your premium.
Yeah.
I think it just needs to be presented clear. And I think once we have more of that security alignment with those providers, hopefully that'll cut through the fog a little bit.
And one last point on cutting through that fog is how they quantify a control. There is some elements of interpretation there. So you take a security professional and an insurance professional, and they could literally be having two different conversations, but using the same words, And so I think we're going to see a continued increase in sophistication in the cyber insurance and industry, right? So they're going to become, they already have a high degree of professional cyber capabilities in their environments, but it's still compared to the rest of the companies, the small percentage that's going to increase dramatically.
Yeah.
Just because you have to speak the same language, and I think there's still some of those challenges there.
Gotcha. Okay, Jim, let's get down to the brass tacks here. I overheard that you're a Jameson fan. Is that true?
Did somebody take a picture of something in my office? And I
overheard that at the bar.
I will happily admit to the world that that I am a absolute Jameson fan. Jameson can do no wrong in my eyes.
You've heard it here first, ladies.
You heard it here first, my friend.
Have you ever tried Jameson and ginger ale?
Yes, I have. I've probably tried Jameson with anything at one point in time, because it makes the world better. It's like pixie dust. It makes everything taste better. No, all seriousness. I've had it, and I'm not a huge ginger ale guy or a ginger beer guy.
Right.
But again, you mix Jameson with it and it's magical. But no, I've had it with ginger ale before. But honestly, mostly just on the rocks.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So my bartender's over there pointing at his watch. I think we're running up on time. And I know you got to get back to Raleigh.
Yeah.
I've spent some time down in Raleigh. I love it down there. One of my favorite bars down there is called Boxcar. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't.
You got to check out Boxcar. It's an awesome bar, but then they also have retro video games.
Oh, that's the best.
I love it. I'll get you the address, but it's very cool. But I haven't spent too much time down there, so I'm just curious what bars I'm missing. Like what bars in Raleigh or outside of the Raleigh area are worth checking out?
So there's one I would recommend, especially if you're going out with your significant other. And I don't know if I'm giving it away because it's technically like a secret bar, but there's no sign for it. You got to go through a door, walk up some stairs, and then there's a hidden door to the bar. And there's about 4 or 5 tables in it. And they serve the craziest drinks. It's a really, 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 really cool place. It's called the Green Light.
The Green Light. Okay.
Green Light. You can only find it because, well, you can look it up and get the address, but you have to get into the door kind of thing. But when you're in the streets, you'll see a tiny little green, it'd be like an Edison light, but a little green one about 30 feet up in the air on the building. And that's your signal. That's you're in the right place kind of thing. It's kind of cool.
I will check that out, man. I love speakeasies.
Last call.
All right. So I just officially heard last call. You have time for one more?
Let's do it.
If you decided to open a cybersecurity theme bar, what would the name be and what would your signature drink be called?
Okay. Of course, I've listened to all your podcasts, so I knew this was coming. So I'm totally prepared. But I don't know if it's cool. My bar name is going to be Cyberbellum. I know it seems weird, but bellum, I think, if I'm correct, is Latin for war. So it's kind of like a play on cyber war. But
okay.
Cyberbellum sounds kind of cool.
I like that. Cyberbellum, one word.
Cyberbellum, just one word. Yeah. Okay. I played around with it. Trying to think of a cool name. That's the only thing I came up with.
I like that a lot, actually.
So the drink, I think the whole concept of malware and all that kind of stuff is kind of cool. So I'll call it the dropper. It has a number of different connotations because I think you'll drop right off the edge of the bar if you drink too many of them. But it's actually what I drink all the time. I also call it like the upside down Jameson and Coke. What I mean by that is you take essentially like 2 or 3 cups of Jameson and then just a tiny little like 2 ounces of Diet Coke. So normally you have a lot of Coke and a little bit of Jameson. Just turn it upside down. A lot of Jameson, a little bit of Coke. The dropper.
But that's awesome, man. I can't wait until you open that bar up. I'll be there getting the dropper. And thanks for dropping by. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the knowledge and the insight and your perspective on all of these things. And I'm ready to go on a used bookstore tour with you one day, and we can just talk security.
That's it.
And shock the world.
That's it. Hit bars all along the way. Chris, I got to tell you, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real honor and a pleasure. You're amazing. It's a wonderful show, and I really appreciate it.
Jim, thanks so much for being an amazing guest, man. You take care. Be safe.
Thanks, bud.
BarCode patrons, if you like this episode and would like to support the podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts and visit our Patreon site, patreon.com/BarCode podcast. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, check out the barcodepodcast.com/sponsor. Cheers.
Unfortunately, it's time to shut the bar down for this episode. Thanks for stopping in. See you next time. We'll save you a seat. Be sure to check us out at thebarcodepodcast.com.